And counting, we are go for a mission to the moon at this time. The second stage tanks now pressurizing, and we're coming up on the power transfer. 50 seconds and counting. We've now switched to internal power. Set 11, 10, 9. We have ignition sequence start. Engines on 5, 4, 3. All engines running. Launch commands.
Well, in my left hand I have a feather. In my right hand a hammer. And I guess one of the reasons we got here today was because of a gentleman named Galileo a long time ago who made a rather significant discovery about falling objects in gravity fields. And we thought that where would be a better place to confirm his findings than on the moon. And so we thought we'd try it here for you. The feather happens to be appropriately a falcon feather for our falcon. And I'll drop the two of them here, and hopefully they'll hit the ground at the same time. How about that? Mr. Galileo was correct.
Half down. 9 forward. Good. 20 feet. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. ATA at a descent. Hose control both auto, descent engine command override off. Engine arm off. 413 is in.
We copy you down, Eagle.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You're looking good here.
Hi everyone, welcome to This Week in Space Science. You're looking at Sean Cruzen there, and we are here again to talk about all the things that are going on in space. Sean, welcome back. You've been away for a little while. We're glad to have you back and giving us the latest news of what's going on out there.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be back with you as always, and realize that summertime schedule is a little bit on the iffy side in terms of consistency, but I'm glad to be back this week.
Hey, we'll have to have you here. I know there's a lot of things going on, so let's just jump right into it. I've got something on my notes here about a spaceship Enterprise.
Yes, and of course there's the famous Enterprise you may have heard of. That was the aircraft carrier. There was an aircraft carrier. There was that first space shuttle that we called Enterprise. But actually there was this one TV show apparently back in the 1960s known as Star Trek. And I guess they flew around the universe in a spaceship called the Enterprise.
Absolutely.
And maybe you've seen that show before or heard of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you know that one. Okay, well, anyway, Richard Branson, Sir Richard Branson, the guy who's in charge of Virgin Galactic and also all the Virgin Enterprises, has been working on his own private spacecraft to take people back and forth to outer space. And that spacecraft is in a series of tests right now. It's known, they named it the Enterprise. And of course, you might have heard of Spaceship One. That was the one that won the X Prize. That's the Ansari X Prize, about the first private spacecraft that actually get a pilot to outer space.
Right.
Here's Richard Branson right now. He's holding a replica of this new spaceship that is called the Enterprise, and it's going to be designed to be dropped from underneath a special kind of plane known as the White Knight. And the White Knight takes this plane up to a certain altitude, then drops it. Then rocket engines on this plane that he's holding the model of here blast it off and get it up into outer space, an altitude high enough to be considered outer space. Now, this is not an orbital flight. This is not a spaceship that will actually fly around the Earth and achieve orbit, but this is a spacecraft that should be able to take passengers high enough for them to be considered in outer space, and that's just a little bit over 60 miles in altitude. Okay. The whole thing is obviously an entrepreneurial venture. So Richard Branson is hoping to be able to test this craft out and be able to then take passengers to outer space at the cost of about $200,000 per seat.
Wow. Now, he's the type of guy who's an entrepreneur. He's very much into adventure. I mean, here he is. He just makes his own spaceship.
He does.
Just to test it out.
That's basically the kind of guy. If you've ever seen any of the Iron Man movies or read the comic books, you know about a guy named Tony Stark And Tony Stark is the brilliant mind behind Iron Man. Well, Richard Branson always kind of reminds me just a little bit of a real life Tony Stark, like you say, a millionaire adventurer type person who is basically building his own space company to take passengers back and forth to space, working with aerospace pioneer Burt Rutan, a very well-known aerospace engineer, and also working with the state of New Mexico, working with their spaceport in New Mexico that will be the site for where these private space flights will take place. Now, the reason we're talking about Richard Branson so much and the accomplishments of this ship is that they made a first flight with this spacecraft. And when I say a first flight, you got to be a little bit careful. It flew underneath its mothership, underneath its parent craft called the White Knight, but they actually put a crew inside of the spaceship. And so this craft did that on July 15th. It took a set of passengers up into not into orbit, but up into a high altitude, being carried underneath the White Knight, the mothership. And so they made their first piloted and crewed flight with this new craft called the Enterprise. Now, it could be that by mid-fall, this thing might actually be ready to do a glide test. So in other words, they fill it full of passengers, take it up, and drop it and let it glide back to the Earth and test all the landing systems on this particular craft.
Sean, have power? Because we talked about the space shuttle. As it comes back in, sort of falling in without its own power.
It's similar to the shuttle on reentry. It doesn't have a powered reentry, but it does have a booster that will carry it into orbit, and so not into orbit, but into space, up to space altitude. So once it's dropped off the mothercraft, it has a booster system that can take it to altitude, and then it will glide back in, very much like a glider. Not so much like the space shuttle, but more like a glider-like airplane vehicle that would come back in under glide power.
Okay, I think we have another shot of that we just need to pull up and take a look at.
There it is, right there. That's a beautiful photograph of it. It's a concept photograph of it coming in and doing a landing. And of course, this is what you might expect to see if this thing really flies and carries a crew and does a glide test sometime this fall.
Amazing.
Very good stuff, and Richard Branson really pushing the envelope of the private human space flight industry.
Okay. Now, we've talked about one of our favorite topics before, and I'm wondering if you're going to go there again.
We're going there again, and there's a reason we're going there again. It's not just because I like to say the word zombie sat, but it's because it's actually kind of important. Some things are going on. So let's go back. If our listeners haven't heard, a zombie sat is a satellite that's basically out of control. And right now, there's a big zombie sat that's out there floating through the geostationary ring of satellites. This zombie sat, its actual name is Galaxy 15. Right. It's a communications, radio and television relay satellite that has a radio broadcast of noise going on. It's usually done to test the satellite, but right now they can't talk to it, so they can't shut it off. Okay. They also cannot control it. So this zombie sat's floating out there among all the other telecommunication satellites, blasting out random radio noise, coming very close to maybe even coming close enough for a collision with other satellites. Not likely, but it could happen, and it's causing a lot of havoc. Okay.
Well, now, yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this for a while, so I keep looking in the paper for some giant explosion or some satellite being blown up by this thing. But so far, we haven't had any news.
Right. Well, and it's good news, actually. No news is good news in this case, because the reason we're talking about it on this show today is it did fly near one of the other telecommunications satellite in that ring, and that's Galaxy 13, a properly functioning communications satellite. So Galaxy 15, the zombie sat, flew by it, blasted out a bunch of radio noise, but they were actually able to put Galaxy 13 into a kind of a safe mode and move it out of the geostationary cluster ring a little bit, allowing this other satellite to pass by safely. And also, they did not lose any kind of radio or TV communications during that time. So in other words, the first incursion by ZombieSat into the geostationary ring, they seem to have been able to mitigate or avoid any kind of negative circumstances that would have happened on that particular pass.
Okay. Now I'm assuming, I mean, this is a naive question, but we see sometimes in spacecraft in space that we see they have these retro rockets that fire to maneuver and move around. Are these satellites equipped in that way?
They are indeed,
Okay.
and they use those to generally to maintain the proper orbit, because that orbit has to be very specific in order for it to maintain that geostationary positioning,
All right.
one position right above the Earth all the time.
I'm going to ask another question about that. What are those are rockets? So they have rocket fuel, and it's
They do have small amounts of fuel, and you can't think of them like a rocket on a launch pad, but more like a kind of a can of hairspray. It's got a propellant in there that it shoots out to be able to, when it shoots the propellant out, it also moves the spacecraft back by one of Newton's laws there. And so for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if it shoots some propellant out, that's also going to move the spacecraft in the opposite direction. It doesn't have to have a lot of that propellant on board to be able to move it and maneuver it in space and change the angle. And they have just enough to be able to maneuver it and keep it in place. But they used a little bit of that propellant in this case to move Galaxy 13 out of the way, let the zombie sat pass by,
Right.
and then move Galaxy 13 back into place. And so that's what happened this week. In the coming weeks here, toward the end of July, it's going to pass by the next one, Galaxy 14. So the zombie sat's going to be back, causing more trouble. So we'll probably have to talk about it again when we find out what the reaction was and what the interference or problems or difficulties encountered because of the zombie sat is still hanging around out there causing trouble. This will be happening right on through September. Now, something interesting, by about mid-August, the zombie sat will actually, its onboard capabilities of being able to hold its position in sunlight so its solar panels can charge, so it can maintain power, that's going to be lost. And so the zombie sat itself will eventually lose power, and all the radio noise will die out. And so that's going to be a good thing when that happens.
Okay.
The zombie sat will be beginning to go through a death phase at that point.
Okay, and it will begin to fall.
Well, it'll begin to at least be able not to put out this radio noise, and it'll eventually move out of the geostationary cluster, and quit causing possible collision problems as well. So this thing eventually will just slowly lose its way off into space and stop being a nuisance. But for right now, definitely still in the nuisance category. Zombie sat causing trouble.
I gotta say, it's been fun to talk about it. Though. As it seems like each week you bring up the zombie.
The zombie sat. Yeah, it's a lot of fun for us to talk about on this show. If I was the telecommunications companies out there really worried about these satellites being able to maintain my radio signals, that would probably be less fun. So it's good fun for us, not so much for them.
For us, but hey, it's going to be a serious problem if we keep on. All right, so you also got here, and there's a picture up in back of you on the monitors for a sunspot that's in the news.
Exactly. There's several stories behind the sunspot photograph. The first story is that there is actually a sunspot, and the reason that's a story is the sun's been in a kind of a quiet phase. We're now coming up out of what's called solar minimum. The sun goes through a 11-year cycle of maximum and minima, where it has either more sunspots or less sunspots, and that cycle happens about every 11 years. We've been in the dip for the last 2 or 3 years where we've had not much solar activity at all, but now we are beginning to have more solar activity on the sun, including this very impressive looking sunspot right here. This is sunspot 1089. It's one of the
name.
It's named. It's actually numbered, but that's its name, I guess. And so it's part of the newest cycle, cycle 24. This new sunspot cycle coming up out of solar minimum. And so solar scientists are very kind of interested in the fact that the sun is becoming more active again. And so that's an interesting thing in itself. Obviously, during the peak of activity, that's when the sun is putting off radio and television interference by blasting out these large solar flares and things like that. So that's why a lot of times we're watching them to make sure we understand what's going on in the sun and can react to it here on the Earth. Now, the other thing that's an interesting part of this story is just that beautiful photograph itself, because that photograph is one of the most detailed photographs of a sunspot ever taken. And that's because it's been taken by a brand new probe that's photographing the sun, and that probe is called SDO. That stands for Solar Dynamic Observatory. Solar Dynamic Observatory, just a marvelously equipped set of cameras to be able to photograph the sun in the extreme ultraviolet. This is a picture taken in very short wavelength ultraviolet, meaning the gas that we're photographing here, the things that look white in this photograph, are gases somewhere up around 80,000 degrees in temperature, which is very hot. It's more than 20 times the temperature of the surface of the sun. So a very, very hot set of sunspots right there, indeed.
Got it. Now, there's also something about the heaviest star?
Well, if we're going to talk about the sun, we probably should talk about the other stars out there. And the sun, by comparison, turns out is we think of it as a very large star, and in fact, it is a lot larger than any of the planets in our solar system. It's also a lot larger than some other stars out there. But as this photograph we have up now will show you, there are a lot of other stars out there much, much bigger than the sun. And the photograph I have right now is not the star I'm going to talk about, but it's called VY Canis Majoris. And that's a star that's much, much bigger than the sun. So you can see that little tiny box down to the bottom part of your screen there on the left. That's got a little tiny sun inside of it. It shows you by comparison, how much bigger stars can be than the sun.
That would be our sun.
That's our sun, right.
Okay, got it.
And remember, we can line up the Earth 109 times across the face of our own sun. So this just goes to show that out there among the stars in the universe, there are some very, very large stars. Well, the news story that goes along with this is that the most massive star ever discovered, and by that nature also one of the largest stars ever discovered, was just discovered this week and just announced somewhere in a companion galaxy of the Milky Way called the Large Magellanic Cloud. And within the Large Magellanic Cloud, there's a hot glowing cloud of gas called the Tarantula Nebula, where brand new baby stars are being born. And it got its name because it kind of looks like a big spidery shape to it. So that's how it got the name Tarantula Nebula. Okay. But within that nebula, there's a star that's called R163A1. Now, I want you to remember there's going to be a quiz later.
I was wondering.
Okay.
Paying attention. Go ahead.
Anyway, there's a big star down there. Okay. So this star that we're seeing in the Tarantula Nebula now that's been discovered has a mass that's potentially over 300 times the mass of the sun. And that just makes this an absolutely gigantic star, a huge luminosity, thousands of times more light and energy coming out of that star discovered in the Tarantula Nebula than in our own sun. And it's the most massive star known, if these numbers pan out to be correct. And so certainly an interesting discovery. Now, the physics says there should be some kind of an upper limit on how big these stars can be and still be stable. And this new star that's discovered down in the Tarantula Nebula, one of the very largest stars to ever be discovered anywhere in space. So a very interesting discovery. It comes out of the University of Sheffield in England, the lead team that was behind this discovery. And so when we say the most massive star discovered, we're not talking about a Hollywood star. Right. We're talking about the kind of star in space, but the most massive star ever discovered, just announced this week in Space Science.
Fantastic.
Good stuff.
Absolutely great. All right, so Coca-Cola Space Science Center's always in the news, always has something going. Tell us about it.
Thank you very much. Much closer to home, the Coca-Cola Space Science Center is still running our summer programs for the summer of 2010. If you're out there and you're interested in some of our summer programs, they're beginning to wind down. You only have a few opportunities to take part in some of the summer activities we have. Of course, we're talking about summer camps. There's only one of those left, and it's for the little guys out there in the audience, the littlest people out there from 5 to 7 years old. Oh, okay. And the name of that camp is called Light Speeders. And if you've ever seen the lobby of the Space Science Center full of 5 to 7-year-olds, you would think that they move at the speed of light. So we got light speeders running around all over the lobby. But we're going to have a lot of great activities for them to take part in. We're going to have rocket launches. We're going to have sci-fi movies. We're going to have a mission in the Challenger Center. We're going to have them look through, we're going to launch some rockets, look through our solar telescopes, just do a lot of great activities over the course of that week. So that'll be coming up next week, the last week in July. And you can still have a chance to get your kids or grandkids involved in light speeders at the Space Science Center.
Yes, sounds great.
In addition to that, one other summer activity we have coming, still going on, but starting to wind down too, is our Callaway Gardens Monday night astronomy programs. We're going to be out there each and every Monday night through the rest of the summer, but that's only 2 left now. The last Monday in July, the first Monday in August, and that's kind of winding up our program as we get to starting to move into the school year. We're going to be starting up our school year programming again. Exactly. And so a couple opportunities still to come out and join us at Callaway Gardens for a nighttime session of observing with Dr. Rosa Williams and the astronomy team from the Space Science Center and the Meade Observatory. They'll be taking out the telescopes a couple more times. Hopefully you can get out on one of those programs with her and the team out there. They do a great job of showing you what's up there in the nighttime sky. There's lots of planets up there right now, so great targets out there. The planet Saturn particularly making a very nice viewing for us over the course of the summer here. So highly encourage you to get out there one more time
yes.
and take part in one of the Callaway Monday night astronomy programs.
Absolutely, and we certainly have been out there ourselves, and it's been great. You learn so much about what's in the sky, and you feel like you're taking knowledge with you when you come back, so later on you can share it with others.
That's right,
it's
exactly.
a great experience to go. We certainly invite everybody to take advantage of that.
It's an awesome opportunity to get the kids involved and interested in science at a very young age, and hopefully that sticks with them then the rest of their life, and they realize the importance of the science and technology disciplines.
Now, in the Omnisphere Theater, you have some things going on there too.
We did. We just had an upgrade. We were actually closed down for a couple of days.
Upgrade.
Yeah, we had an upgrade. So we're upgraded. we actually upgraded the control software that runs the theater. And so there was nothing structurally that happened. We weren't doing any renovations, but just kind of upgrading the computer systems, the control software. And we're now running a program from Evans and Sutherland Corporation out in Salt Lake City, Utah, that's called Digistar 4. So Digistar, we were running Digistar 3. Right. We've now upgraded to Digistar 4. Yes. So it's the Digistar 4 control system that's now running the theater at the Omnisphere Theater at the Coca-Cola Space Science Center, our planetarium. And it is really cool. It added a lot of great capabilities, especially in our interactive star sessions that we run down there. A lot of fly-through capabilities and things we didn't have before. So we're really excited about that upgrade. And now that we're back up and running, we're running some great shows again back in the Omnisphere Theater throughout the month of July. The rest of the month of July here, we'll be running a show called Ice Worlds, which talks.
I've seen the advertisement for that. That's a great iceberg sitting there. The big blue iceberg.
It's awesome, actually. It's a great show too, and it's particularly here in the hot summertime. It's kind of nice to come indoors to nice air conditioning and talk about ice. Seems to kind of cool you off a little bit, but the show is all about the importance of ice in our cryosphere, in our Earth's frozen part of our Earth here, and also about the importance of ice throughout the planets and moons of our solar system as well, and what a big role it plays in all those venues. It's a great show. It's a great way to learn about all the environmental issues that are going on, plus how ice plays a very important role throughout the solar system. And in addition to that, we also have another great show running in the Omnisphere that I forgot what it is. The other show that we're running is called Secrets of the Sun. Yeah. Secrets of the Sun is kind of important, talking about that great sunspot that we just showed you just a minute ago. You can learn all about the sun's solar cycle, all about how those big sunspots are generated, and why they're so energetic and why they're so important for the interactions that they have right here with the Earth and all the telecommunications equipment and electrical systems that we have here on the Earth. So a great show to come down and see. Secrets of the Sun and Ice Worlds, the two main features in the Omnisphere Theater in the month of July.
So many things going on. You just have to go down and see what's there. It's amazing. But there's a laser show too occasionally.
There is, yeah. Sometimes you just want to kick back and have a little Friday night entertainment. And we have perfect Friday night entertainment, especially if you're a Beatles fan, because we are running Laser Beatles in the Omnisphere. If you like laser shows, if you just like Beatles music, or if you're just looking for something unique and different to do on a Friday night, come down. Running at 8 o'clock in the Omnisphere Theater will be Laser Beatles, some of your favorite Beatles classic songs set to some interesting and beautiful laser light graphics up there on the inside of the Omnisphere Theater's 50-foot dome.
Oh,
10,000 watts of sound ready to go and pump out Beatles music.
Now, Sean, I don't know. This was penciled in on my schedule here, but there's something about a comic book show.
We have the comic book show, yes, the Columbus Comic Book Show coming up the first week in August, August 2nd. It's a Sunday. We're not generally open on Sundays, but sometimes for our science fiction conventions or our comic book shows, we will be open on a Sunday, and that's going to happen on August the 2nd. So you can come down and join Dutch Cummings, who's one of our staff members that organizes this particular event. All his favorite comic book geeky friends from all around town getting together. You'll see the costume characters down there from the Star Wars Club, perhaps the Star Trek Club. They'll be around.
It's time for the guys to get the costumes
exactly.
out.
We never miss an opportunity to get the costume characters out.
Get a camera, get down there and take some.
You need to do that, actually. Or if you just want to look for something fun to do on a Sunday afternoon, it's a great thing to do. Also, if you're a collector, there's going to be all kinds of other collectors there who will be buying and selling comic books. You can bring your comic books down or just come down and look to buy a few other ones. Collectibles, toys, games, hobbies, all that kind of stuff happens at the Columbus Comic Book Show on August 2nd. And if you like that, might want to mark your calendar for in October, because on October the 9th, we'll also be having the Columbus Science Fiction Convention at the Space Science Center. The Sci-Fi Convention, Sci-Fi Con, Columbus, coming back on October the 9th. Same cast of characters probably be there, but we'll probably have a different... We'll probably always try to get a special guest to come down for the Sci-Fi Con, and we'll certainly be looking for that to happen in October.
Well, that sounds wonderful. I know we mentioned the River City Pass before, but that's a great bargain. Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about that?
River City Pass is just an outstanding it's an outstanding collaboration between a bunch of venues that are very educational and entertaining in the Columbus area. We have us, of course, the Coca-Cola Space Science Center. I like to think we're entertaining and educational. We also have the Port Columbus Naval Museum is involved, and two of the entities at the Infantry Museum, the National Infantry Museum, both their IMAX theater and their virtual shooting range. Together, we all went together and said, hey, if you buy one ticket, you can get into all of these great venues for a one-time visit for just $20. And that's a lot cheaper than if you were to go buy individual tickets to all those venues.
Yes.
And that's called the River City Pass. Now, if you buy that pass, there's also a lot of discounts that come along with it for a lot of the other downtown vendors and attractions. Places like the River Center for Performing Arts, the Springer Opera House, they're both offering discounts. A lot of the great restaurants in the downtown areas.
Downtown are great these days.
Exactly.
More people are discovering.
Yeah, that's right. And you can get some great discounts, free appetizers with meals and all kinds of other stuff at those downtown restaurants. Also, many of the downtown merchants, we're talking everything from jewelry stores to eyeglass stores to other places, are offering discounts if you come in and show them your River City Pass. It's just $20. You get all those great benefits. If you want to know more about that, get on www.rivercitypass.com. All one word, rivercitypass.com. You can find out about all the participating merchants that are involved in that and all the great discounts and where you can actually pick up a River City Pass. But I can guarantee you can pick one up at the Coca-Cola Space Science Center. So you might want to come down there and check that one out first.
I wonder what that address is.
I think I can remember it. It's actually 701 Front Avenue, right down there next to the Columbus Trade and Convention Center, right on the lovely Columbus Riverwalk.
What about the website?
www.ccssc.org. Charlie, Charlie.org is where our address is on the World Wide Web.
That is fantastic. Sean, as always, we appreciate you coming in and letting us know about it. We also want to tell our viewers that we are now on iTunes. You can find, just look us up and go in the search box under podcasts and look at TWiSS, TWiSS, This Week in Space Science. And you'll see all the shows there. You can also go to coehp.tv where you're watching right now and go to our on-demand site. Just click on that and click on This Week in Space Science. You can choose all of the shows that we have up there. Very informative, very entertaining. Gives you a lot of information about what's going on, and we invite everybody to stay tuned. So again, Sean, thank you so much with everything that's been going on today. It's been a blast.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate the time being here.
Okay.